And we have a conversation tonight with the Works and Housing Minister. There are just a host of things to talk about as far as that ministry is concerned. The rainy season is here. Each time you're going into the rainy season, everybody become very worried. Why? Because of the floods. We talk about it quite a lot. And I come from a place where flooding was a very common occurrence in Adabraka, very close to the Odo River. And people there, each time it rains, will pray that it doesn't flood. So how is the minister addressing that? He's my guest tonight. The key thing that he has to contend with is inadequate funding. The ministers who have come before him have complained about this over time. Samuel Atacha did the same. He complained about it. He really was struggling to find the funds to fix the many challenges that the ministry faces. And then Asenso Boachi also went there, had the same challenge also. He told us the same. And then we have Kojo Oppong Nkrumah there also. So how is he dealing with that particular challenge of inadequate funding? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about affordable housing shortage. And this really is something that every government has tried, but none have really succeeded on that large scale to make a dent in that 1.8 million housing deficit that we currently have. So how is he fundamentally, comprehensively addressing that challenge when it comes to affordable housing? It's in shortage across the country quite a bit. We'll talk about that too. And then we talk about this housing deficit, which is linked to that. It has to be affordable, but housing generally is something that most people are looking for but can't find because the supply is just so limited if you compare to demand. The minister has launched an initiative. We'll interrogate that and whether that indeed will address this fundamentally. And then you talk about the drainage system, which has started with. Everybody's talking about that at this moment. We will look into it. In fact, there is a NADMO data that talks about between 2015 to 2020, we had more than 500 deaths attributed to flooding alone. So it is a major challenge. The Auditor General did an audit of the work that the hydrological department had done in terms of fixing the drains across the country and found defects, significant defects indeed. Monies were spent, more than 170 million cedis, but because of poor monitoring, he established that the drains didn't serve the purpose. How is the minister addressing the particular challenge also? Because some money had come in, 150 million from the World Bank had been approved by Parliament. I'm wondering whether that money has hit the account yet, and are we already implementing the project under the Garrett arrangement? He will talk to us about that. But also remember that we are in an election season. He also happens to be the vice chair of the MPP Manifesto Committee, and so we'll talk about the elections. We'll talk about where they are with the manifesto. And we are having a conversation about the MPP running mate too, because tomorrow we expect that Baobia will present the name of the Energy Minister, Majo Prokupempe, to the party's National Council, and we expect that that should be a formality, although we've heard people complain already. Apia Kubi had gone public already to say he is opposed to that particular nomination, the nomination of the Energy Minister. He will be part of the National Council meeting by virtue of the fact that he is a member of Parliament. What about others? I'll pick his thoughts on this very matter. You want to stay with us. A lot to get through for you. Housing, flooding, politics. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah is my guest after this. And PMFS is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. It's also brought to you, as you know, by our coverage of the ongoing Euros. And I'll tell you what to look forward to as far as that is concerned. But Syntex Tanks of the Tank I always recommend to you every night here on PM Express because they have bespoke offerings that you won't find anywhere else. 7 years warranty. You can also choose any size, any color you want. And they are across the country. Pick a phone and call them. 0244-335-168 and shop online at syntexgh.com. Syntex Tanks, a strong, a tap. Now, the Multimedia Group, we are the official free radio broadcast right owners of the Euro 2024, and we will deliver live commentary of the selected games, including the opening game, which I'm pretty sure you watched, and the ongoing right now, the quarterfinals that we'll be seeing pretty shortly, starting on Friday. It's all going to be live on Love, on Joy, on Hits FM, Adom FM, Inshra FM, and Asempa FM. Apart from the live radio commentary, the Multimedia Group has also, as you know, secured the rights to ensure that you get all that information across our digital platforms as well, live streaming of the commentary that will bring you. And so you really don't want to miss a thing as far as the coverage of the Euro 2024 is concerned. My guest in the studio you know, is Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. He is a Minister for Works and Housing. Thank you very much, Mr. Oppong Nkrumah, for your time here on PM Express.
Thanks for having me.
And let's start with the obvious, because we're in the rainy season. It rained today for quite a bit, and everybody in the newsroom was wondering, has there been floods somewhere? Normally you have calls coming in, people in distress. NADMO is mobilizing to go in and try and fix it. I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that keeps you awake at night. When you were first confirmed, goodness me. Thankfully, you've been a journalist before, and so you know that when the rainy season approaches, everybody's looking forward to a major one. Then the minister is on the phone, touring. How much of that gives you sleepless nights?
I think it's my major pain point at this particular point. This dawn, for example, when the rain started here in Accra, you start getting palpitations, because then you're wondering, knowing very well the inadequacy of the work that has been done so far as compared to the increasing pressure, there will be challenges. And then, you know, you're trying to get an understanding of how severe the situation is, how much of the work we've done can contain it, and what needs to be done in the short to medium term. It is a challenge, and as I've said on a number of occasions, we are behind schedule on putting in place the kind of infrastructure that is required. But we're doing the best that we can. Just last week, I was just around the Paloma area as we broke ground for another stretch between Paloma and the Odo stretch to expand the storm drains and also to provide some covering for it. Your guys were there to cover it. So within the constraints, we're trying to do our best.
Recently, you got Parliament to approve some money for you, 150 million. Admittedly, part of the biggest challenges that your ministry has faced is lack of funding to get this done. Is that money in your accounts now, or the account of the government?
My understanding is that that money has hit the government's accounts at the Ministry of Finance, which is held at the Bank of Ghana. But that money is for the garage projects. And the garage project deals with just one out of the about 8 or so channels in the Greater Accra region that are supposed to convey high volumes of water out of the capital when you have rains. That money was supposed to be top-up money that is supposed to help pay for some previously unfunded parts of the program, essentially, and then to pay for some price variation. So yes, that money has hit, according to the information I have, the Ministry of Finance's accounts at the Bank of Ghana. The World Bank, which is managing that project through the Garage Secretariat, jointly run between the World Bank and the Ministry of Works and Housing, is then going to issue, may I say, adverts for the specific lots that will be taken care of by that funding, and then they'll go through that process. How it is structured has actually been part of the reason for which there's been a bit of delay in implementing it, because initially you needed designs approved by Hydro and then by the World Bank before they go into execution. Now we've managed to make it a concurrent review process so that we halve the time. But we're expecting that now that the funding has hit the account, that and then the previously unexecuted parts of the program can be fast-tracked a little bit.
Okay, so when you expect, for example, clear timelines, the first projects to sort of go through for?
With the work that has been done, I think in the next about 3 weeks, the Kaneshi area, the storm drains around the Kaneshi area, we'll have the opportunity to go there and hand it over to the contractor. In fact, when we did the handing over of the Paloma to Odo stretch, I hinted there that in about 3 weeks we'll be at the Kaneshi area as well, because you know Kaneshi is one of the areas where if you look at the volumes of water that are coming in, and if you look at the kind of drains that were constructed initially and the technology that was used, it requires some more expansion and depth. If it's not done, you will see that Kaneshi floods literally every time when you have the rains coming from the bank quarters, intersection of the drain coming all the way to Kaneshi. So that's one of the next lots that we'll be dealing with very shortly. And then we've got the retention ponds that we need to build, may I say, just under the Ebri Mountain so that it can hold a lot more of the water and then discharge it out of Accra gradually. So we've got a lot of work to go on now that the money is got in. I think in the next 3 weeks or so, you see some more traction.
How much do you need in all to fix this flooding problem permanently across the country?
The Ghana Hydro Authority yesterday, and you know we've just started our 3-day national conference on hydro and housing. The Ghana Hydro Authority yesterday, if I saw the figures they put up correctly, to deal with the problem across the whole country, they're talking about $6 billion. which is money they have to find over a period and prioritize on specific projects.
$6 billion. It's been on the books for a while because I understand we have the drainage master plan, which was costed and done some years back. We haven't quite moved. I was speaking recently to the head of the drainage department that's Richard Ameko, who was making that very point. How much of the money have you raised, you have in the bank right now, apart from the 150 million?
Very little. In fact, yesterday I launched the Ghana Hydro Fund, which is included in the Ghana Hydro Authority Act 2022. And the Hydro Fund is supposed to help us mop up some more resources to complement what government gives us every year. I think the National Flood Control Program itself has only done 3 rounds, 2018, 2020, and 2023. And it's very, very limited. If you take the Greater Accra region, for example, for all the drainage works, the concrete drainage works that need to be done, only 2% of it has been done. 2%. And so that tells you that we don't have enough well-structured channels to get water out every time there is rainfall. What the fund will do is to help mop in some more resources beyond even the seed money that government put in, just about 1.5 million cedis yesterday. Some of our development partners, we've got some of the green funds around the world that are interested in climate resilience, interventions. So our objective is to crowd in some more resources to complement what government gives us on a yearly basis. Last year, I think 98 million cedis, that was 2023. The flood control program had about 98 million cedis that was made available to add up to a bit of the drainage works across the country. And in our industry, 98 million cedis can do so much. I mean, it can do very, very little. So it's very limited, but we need to mobilize some more resources to be able to tackle the situation head on.
Is the master plan itself adequate? Or you need to review it?
Well, I mean, so the thing about technology is that as the years go by, you need to review. But the master plan as is now is adequate. It tells us the kind of work we need to do. But as the country develops a bit more, and as the pressures on the infrastructure increase, you have to review every now and then. For example, the current technology they are using, I think they call it the Buzia drain technology or so that they are using. If you look at how much water it can retain and how much rainfall was envisaged at the time that technology was evolved or that kind of drainage system was evolved, we are finding that it's increasingly becoming inadequate. And that's why for many of the places now, they need to literally dig up the old ones and redo them. So it is adequate for now, but in about some 5 to 7.5 years, you have to take a second look at whether or not. And that's why when you are building it, you need to build it with some resilience in mind so that it can serve a purpose for a forecasted period.
I may ask that question because 3 weeks ago, your deputy did a meeting with the Hydrological Authority and gave them at least 2 weeks to come up with a plan. I saw that and I was querying because I know the master plan exists, and I spoke to Ameko and he says that master plan exists. How do you reconcile that directive to them and the plan that already exists?
So you have a big hydro master plan that was done some years gone by. There's been a lot of development since then, and one of the things that you are finding is that a lot of the built environment spatial development is not conforming to the general land use, plan. For example, people build their homes, and where they are not supposed to tile every part of the home and leave some part with, greens so that rainwater can seep into the earth and not become runoff water. People are doing all of it. You have communities that are literally tiled, even with what you call wet area tiles, etc. What that means is that as the years go by, the plan becomes inadequate. What the ministry, instructing through the deputy minister, has asked them to do is to review what we have currently. Yes, we have a ballpark figure of what we need. We have the kilometerage of concrete drains that need to be done, but they need to quickly review that and give us an updated picture so that even as we are trying to achieve what exists now, we don't only do it to find out that what we have here today is outdated.
And then there was also the concern about even the small amount of money you have that you're pumping into this. Are you using it well? Are you monitoring to ensure that it's been effectively applied to fix the problem? The Auditor General gives us a hint of the problem that you have to deal with. They recently found that 170 million that was spent between 2015 and 2019 on projects that were executed under the Hydrological Authority, a significant number of them had defects. In fact, to be very specific, they sampled 27 projects across the country and found that 15 had defects. Have you dealt with this?
The dealing with...
And this is because of lack of monitoring?
Yes. So you'll find that in the beginning, there was no Ghana Hydro Authority. So what would typically happen is that contracts will be awarded, consultants will be put there, and it will end there. It's between the contractor and the consultant. All of these were the reasons for which the Ghana Hydro Authority Act was passed to set up a proper hydro authority that will grandfather or superintend the work that the consultants and the contractors are doing and ensure that the kind of defects that were showing up in part of the work that was being done is contained. The Hydro Authority is still relatively new. Law passed, I think, in 2022. We are now, or we have now set them up fully. Even the fund had not been operationalized. It was yesterday that we launched it. And so though we are taking steps to correct some of these defects, I won't sit here and tell you that it's 100% kosher currently. We need to ensure that the Hydro Authority is strengthened and can function properly with a lot of expertise so that now the Hydro Authority can superintend the work that the consultants and the contractors are going to be doing. You need to have clarity of your master plan so that when contractors and consultants are designing specific projects, they design them in conformity with your master plan. Of course, your master plan needs to be reviewed every now and then. So have we taken steps? Steps are being taken, and I'm sure that sooner more than later, we will see some of these defects go down.
I mean, this still remains an issue. Specifically to this finding, this is a period of 2015 to 2020. Admittedly, yes. 2019. Admittedly, you have inherited this. Many will tell you that in this country, the biggest problem we have is that there's no consequence for anything. How seriously are you viewing this? Or are you going to say, well, I didn't inherit it, so it's gone?
My focus is to get a strong hydro authority to ensure that the bleeding is stopped. If we are successful in achieving that, we are also able then to look at major works that have not elapsed their defect periods. I mean, if a contractor is given a contract to execute a project and that project has not been executed in accordance with the project standards, there are ways by which you can, within that defect liability period, get the contractor to do the necessary things. But my priority number one is to ensure that we have a strong hydro authority so that going forward, we stop the bleeding.
What do you say tonight to the thousands, including my old community in Adabraka, those who live along the Odo River, who we sent a reporter there yesterday, came back with a fantastic report. They're so concerned. It still happens today that it floods. What do you say to them, concerned that between now and the time that the rainy season ends, they will not have only one time when your rooms are flooded, but many, many times? What do you say to them?
That the resolution of this challenge is not going to be a one-day matter. It's going to be a medium to long-term matter. It requires all of us to participate. For example, government has to do its bit. I've just told you about the Hydro Authority. I've just told you about the Hydro Fund. I've told you about the fact that we need to mobilize some more resources. We can wish it into being, but if we don't mobilize the resources, we'll talk about it umpteenth times and never get responses. We should also be clear to make the point that we have that collective responsibility, which includes the responsibility of people who live in these areas. Even for places where limited drains have been constructed, Evans, you and I will bear testimony to the fact that we choke them with solid waste based on our lifestyle on a daily basis. In fact, when we went to the Paloma to Odo area, it was the point that the Member of Parliament, Zanetto Rawlings, the Regional Minister, Titus Glover, the MC kept making over and over again. We at the ministry have just, as part of this year's hydro efforts, or flood control efforts, have just rolled out a comms campaign just aimed at encouraging people that while we are building the drains, don't choke them. Don't choke the little drains that we have built with the solid waste. We need some behavioral change as well. So what I say to everybody is that we have a collective responsibility. It will take a while. Let's all get together and get this done.
You have a plan. What's your estimation? How long it will take before we begin to see the effect of all the policies that you're implementing?
On the hydro front, we need to get the cash in. If we don't get the cash in, very little can be achieved. We've had engagements with the minister responsible for finance. He's given us the necessary assurances that he's dealing with the financial situation so that he can mobilize some resources for us to do more than we are doing. We've already got the Garrett funding in the account, and I'm pushing the contractors. I'm sure you followed. I'm pushing the contractors and the consultants and the Hydro Authority to get as much done as possible within this period. But the medium to long-term solution is that we need to get more resources.
What is the medium term? What does it look like? In specific 2, 3?
Well,
long term,
when you say the
10
medium
years?
term, you're talking about 5 years. Within the next 5 years, we need to mobilize. We're talking about 6 billion across the country. We need to mobilize. We need to prioritize funding for the hydro program so that we're able to tackle it. And we will do our best to mobilize resources into it and get government to also make resources available. And we reach out to our development partners, to private sector. You know, there are places where people take flood insurance. Why? Because they're trying to contribute to the mitigation of the risk. We've got private entities around many of these enclaves. You remember the MTN area where anytime it used to rain, a lot of vehicle companies there will now have lots of losses, etc. We have a collective responsibility, and I believe that if we all contribute to funding the solution, we'll get somewhere.
Let's talk about housing now, and a major problem that you have to deal with, 1.8 million housing deficit. The biggest problem there, every government had tried to deal with this matter. Kufuor started some project, didn't quite finish. It's still very famous. It's a young journalist still covering that, and the government that takes over doesn't finish. You still have the Saglame on your hand, and a clear example of that. What's your approach to dealing with this problem?
I like the fact that you raise the question of approach, because approach has been one of our major challenges. From independence coming, we had a situation where successive governments sought to use national resources to build a bit. You know, Nkrumah flats here, you have some SNF flats here, Dansuman, Redco flats, etc. We found over the years, as we're even talking about hydro, that the national fiscal resources are limited. You can only do so little with it. The approach we're adopting is a PPP approach. Because when you go the government funding route, government project execution has its own challenges. A lot of the government-funded projects end up in one scandal or the other. What we are doing is changing the model now to a PPP approach totally. And to make that work, if you look at the data today, on an annual basis, we are delivering about 35,000 homes, 98% of it from the private sector, with no government support. Yet we talk about affordable housing. And what the private sector ends up building is out of the reach of the average Ghanaian. So what we're doing now is to say, what do we do to make it worth your while in the private sector so that you can deliver affordable housing? Because you have the speed, you have the technology, you have the efficiency. What can we do for you? We are here to serve you. What can we do for you? In the last 1 month, we've been engaging the private sector and other stakeholder groups, and they've been nominating to us some ideas, which ideas we've put together into an incentives package, focusing on about 8 major parts on the supply side to get the housing supply out there at the price point that we want, and then about 4 major points on the demand side to make it easier that once they have supplied, those who are looking for access to housing can get it out there. It is this incentives package which we are expecting Cabinet and Parliament to approve so that we offer it to the private sector, because the private sector has told us in our engagements, and today, for example, at the conference when we spend time on housing, they've told us that if you get this on the table, it will make it worth our while.
What incentives are we talking about?
So, for example, land. If a private sector developer wants to buy his own land and develop a project, he's got to contend with land prices. He's got to contend with issues of multiple sale of land, etc. Government has land banks. Why don't we make it available to the private sector and prioritize that this is where our land banks are? So forget about land. It's not part of your cost. If you take something like the horizontal infrastructure, roads, water, energy,
But the lands
drainage.
they'll buy, right?
Not necessarily. So there are some that, as in the private sector?
Yes, the private sector.
No, we don't intend to make the land available to the private sector at cost. We intend to make the land available to the private sector because government has land banks. We don't need to sell it to the private sector if we really want affordable housing.
So what's in it for government?
So what's in it for government is that you are able to, housing is a need. Housing is a right. You want your citizens to live in a place where they have dignity, where they have some comfort and self-respect. Now, if you're going to do that, you don't hold you don't hold on to the land that this is government land, so we are keeping. You make it available to the private sector and say, build 10,000, flats here.
Because it's the private sector. They want profit.
To go, yes, but then it means that you reduce their cost. They don't have to buy the land. They don't have to provide their own horizontal infrastructure. Like I said, roads, drainage systems, electricity and water, etc. They don't need to provide it themselves because all of that increases the cost. The third thing we are doing is that if you are a private developer and you're going to build to a certain capacity, currently the numbers we are playing with are about 500 units and above. Government should be bold enough to say that your machines and equipment that you are bringing in, we're going to ask Parliament to waive the taxes on it for them. Because what are we doing with your taxes? We want to deliver services with it. Obviously, we're not going to deliver housing at that scale and efficiency. So why don't you rather let the private operator bring in his machines and equipment tax-free so that he can then apply it to building these properties and the prices come down? We're looking at something like construction financing. Today, if the private developer has to go to a bank to take a loan to build a project, even the interest on that loan, when added to the cost of the project itself, takes the project through the roof. So through the National Home Ownership Fund, we've had a series of meetings with the banks. How do we make the National Home Ownership Fund available to the banks with a blended rate, blended finance rate that brings down the cost of construction financing? Look at cement prices, iron rod prices, materials for housing. If somebody's going to do a large-scale project, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 projects, should we still be charging them taxes on cement and iron rods? Would it not make more sense to allow them to bring it in if they have shown financial close and if they've signed on to our PPP model? So the idea is to offer these incentives to the private sector so that it will bring down the cost of construction. And then you can agree with them based on your schematics that a two-bedroom unit should cost maybe the CD equivalent, I'm just saying, of about $20,000 or $25,000 or $15,000. Because if you don't deal with the things that are contributing to the high cost of construction, there's no way you're going to get affordable housing. The use of local materials, for example, the compressed earth approach which we used in Apiatsi, for example, it brings down drastically the cost of construction. How do we encourage more developers to use that approach? So on the supply side, these are the incentives that we've discussed with the private sector. Today we did the market sounding at the Labadi Beach Hotel. They gave us their feedback, very, very good feedback. I'm now going to first make a statement in Parliament about where we have come, go to Cabinet and then come to Parliament for approval, because it will mean amending some of our laws to allow these things to happen. And then when we are successful, the private sector can then deliver at the price point that makes sense as affordable housing.
So the taxpayer is going to give the private developer land at no cost, and you say they'll get drainage, they'll get roads. So all they need to do is go and build.
Yes.
Plus,
at the price point we have agreed.
Price point. Plus, if you want to import products for the building, you're going to give them tax waivers also at the port. So duties will be waived for them also. What you're hoping to get out of this for the taxpayer is that the price point is at the point where the ordinary Ghanaian can afford.
Yeah.
What's the guarantee, though? Because you're dealing with private developers whose primary goal is to make profit. Are you going to compel them by a law to set prices that you believe everybody else can afford? So, how do you achieve that?
So the model we have developed is that if you're a private developer and you want these incentives, you come and you sign a contract with us to do a PPP project. In that PPP project, we've agreed with you on the schematics and the pricing, that government is giving you A, B, C, D, E, so that your price point for, let's say, a two-bedroom or one-bedroom or a three-bedroom or a four-bedroom can be X. We agree. We look at it. You have your surveyors, we have our surveyors. You have your technocrats, we have our technocrats. We go through it. And then we're able to arrive at that price point. And you sign up to it. When you sign up to it and you take our incentives, you have an obligation to deliver at that price point. You can't turn around and go and say that you have changed the pricing because of what? We have a certain agreement. What we are avoiding is government going to borrow 300, 400 million like Saglemi, purporting to come and put up a development, and then you have all the challenges that come up with it, or government having land that is just sitting fallow, and people looking for homes, can't find homes, and are at the mercy of agents and landlords. So in that contractual framework, you, the private sector developer, are obliged to deliver at the price point that we have agreed. Thankfully, it's been done in other countries. In Cote d'Ivoire, in other countries, this model has been utilized and it has been successful, and we intend to replicate that same one here. What the developers are asking for, which is the latent thing in your question, is, so are you sure I will get people to buy at this price point?
We'll come to that. I mean, because it all comes down to what is affordable.
Yes.
It's the biggest question we haven't managed to answer.
Absolutely.
Because your importing is always priced in dollars. But I'll come to that. But to the main point, we simply don't trust politicians when they take control of our resources and say they're forming public-private partnerships. We don't trust our politicians. You're going to give our land to the private developers. You're going to give them roads. It means that you are investing more taxpayers' monies into creating the environment for them to thrive. What are the mechanisms in this plan? Because clearly the plan has been thought through to prevent abuse.
The first thing you're doing is that it's not left ajar that anybody goes anywhere and starts. We've got land banks that we have clarity on that we are using for these PPP projects.
Has been valued?
Well, yes, we have clarity of the costs. For example, in the areas where we paid compensation for the land, we know the value of the land. In areas where families and schools have said, I have land, I don't want money, put it in your PPP framework and have it developed and yield a percentage of it to me as my equity in this project. We have clarity of that because you have to do the value for money before you get into it. This PPP framework, first of all, goes for seal of approval at the Ministry of Finance. So currently what we've done is that we are in the process of concluding the master framework, the master PPP framework with the Ministry of Finance so that you don't have to go back and forth on every single transaction. Once you have the master framework and the incentives approved, when a private developer shows up and you say, I'm giving you my Gomwa enclave, it's been designed to take 15,000 homes. This is the schematics, this is the price point. They do their assessment and valuation, and then we're able to match and lock in a contract between government as the facilitator and you, the private developer. The other thing is that, Evans, there needs to be a lot of transparency around how these things are done. You'll notice that, for example, even in trying to resolve Saglemi, we are being 100% transparent. We've announced the entire roadmap. We're going to publish all the bits we are getting, publish the evaluation report, publish the final contract. These things need to be put out in the public domain so that there's clarity and then there is no room for abuse when you have transparency in it. But for me, the biggest thing is that when you have this clear expectation and the private developer knows with certainty that this is what the government of Ghana is offering me, this is what the government of Ivory Coast is offering me, this is what the government of Morocco is offering me, he then makes a choice. Who's giving me the choices and the most attractive destination to invest in housing? And who is giving me the best opportunity to help create these new settlements and these new cities that I'm looking for? And we are clear, first from our disposition as a political party, and we are clear as an administration that it is in offering a body of incentives to the private sector who are already doing housing, but they are just doing high-end housing. It is in offering them this body of incentives that you can attract them to come to the more important, in my view, the more important and critical part of the market, which is the affordable housing.
How are we selecting or settling on which private developer to use for this process? Is it an open bidding process where everybody else can put in an application and then use the parameters to decide?
In the model that we have done, in the PPP framework that we have done, we're going to list our land banks that are available for this project and say, come forward. Just like what we've done with Saglemi.
So this is competitive?
This is competitive, just like what we've done with Saglemi. In Saglemi, for example, we announced the whole world that we're going to look for private developers to do it.
And what is the criteria for selection? Are you price point only?
So again, I'll use Saglemi as an example. In Saglemi, we said we're looking for technical and financial capacity. I think 70% financial, 30% technical capacity. And we issued a whole request for proposals that detailed all the technical specifications that we were looking for. And private developers come forward, they pick it up, they go, they have access to go and see the facility that is there and are building their own proposals. On the 8th of July, we're expecting to receive those proposals. And out of those proposals, we will make a selection of who is the best developer, who we have determined can do this. We're already signing up one of the top accounting firms to do the evaluation. So this is going to be open and out there, and you can interrogate it. And so in that open...
So it'll be published?
Published, like we have done, like I said for Saglemi, we'll publish it. Private developers who are interested, you come forward, you look at the schematics, you work your numbers, you compare to our numbers, you like it, you pick it.
So this will end up in the hands of MPP-affiliated contractors.
Why would it be? Well, nobody's barring CPP or PNC or other political interested people from picking up forms and participating in the process. I've told you, for example, in Saglemi, the evaluation is not even being done by us. It's going to be done either by PwC or Deloitte or Ernst & Young or somebody. One of these big accounting firms is going to do the evaluation. What we do is to define policy and set the criteria and put it out there. And as is our policy, we've said it in the case of Saglemi, we'll do it in these ones, we will publish all the bids we receive and publish the evaluation report. And you can pick it up here on your show and put it all out and compare the various bids, compare the evaluation report, and see if anything funny is taking place. So it's not going to end up in the hands.
Apart from the land banks that you already have,
projects, yeah.
you are going to provide roads, drainage. That is going to cost you money.
Yeah.
Where are you going to get the money from?
Good question. But not new money. Essentially, what we have done is to say that when somebody comes, so first of all, it's not just the Ministry of Works and Housing that's doing this. In fact, the work we are doing is being done primarily between us and the Ministry of Finance. And then as a second level, the Ministries of Roads, Energy and Water are the next level of participators. So when you come forward and get into a bankable project, the rule will be that the other sectors prioritize their spend on their budgets that are already available into these projects. So for example, one of the problems Pokwase is facing, the Pokwase Affordable Housing Project is facing, is that money is expected to be voted to the Ministry of Works and Housing to pay for the roads and drainage and other things. And we all know the financial difficulties that we have if you're looking for extra money. So one of the parts in the new model that we have done is that if we have a bankable project and we have 10,000 homes coming up in, let's say, Gomwa, the budgets of roads and energy and water, they will have to prioritize to deliver where we know for a fact that 10,000 homes are coming, instead of just necessarily expending on their old programs. So it's not new money. It's prioritization of the existent budget to deliver where you know exactly projects are coming up from. And that's how you solve the money problem without having to require new money. You don't have to give us the money, but we have to just...
But it's all coming from the national budget.
Absolutely. So if, like this year's budget, for example, if the budget for roads is 3 billion this year, the cabinet decision consequent to all of this will be that roads, once this 10,000 homes are coming up here, don't go build a road to nowhere. Prioritize the construction of roads in this area. Water, prioritize from your budget. Energy, prioritize extension of electricity into this particular enclave. So that we don't require new money, we prioritize the old money to deliver where projects have been booked and are coming up.
How do you define affordable?
Affordable is a price point depending on the floor space. It's a price point also depending on the salary levels. But in between the two, you have to get to a point where you are clear that if the potential buyer were to get a mortgage over the average period of about 15 years, he can buy. So if you take a teacher's salary today, if you take a policeman's salary today, a nurse's salary today, what is it?
Which is an average of 3,000 cedis.
The rule of thumb is that you shouldn't spend more than 40% on servicing your mortgage. So what is 40% of that amount? And spread over about 15 years, can it pay for this property? That is the framework within which you are working to define affordable. Else, if you don't and you go end up doing a project that people cannot afford with a mortgage, you're just building empty shells that nobody will be picking.
Yeah, considering that the average salary of a public servant, a teacher, etc., is 3,000 cedis, even then I'm overestimating slightly because it's just over 2,500 thereabout. 40% of that is just over 1,500 thereabout, right?
Times 12 months, times 15 years. So that is the framework within which the banks and the developers are working. When we sat with the banks, what they told us was that at that amount, if they got an average young person who's gotten a job around 30 years and they're writing a 15-year, even a 20-year mortgage, at that amount, they will be able to, if the developers with these incentives are developing at the price point that matches to it, they will be able to do it. It is within this framework.
And it'll take 1,500 cedis a month?
But of course...
Over 50 years, you say?
15.
15 years.
But of course, salaries are adjusted. The 1,500 is not going to be static for the next 15 years. Salaries are adjusted every year as the years go by. The other thing...
That's so ambitious. That is just over-optimism.
It's not my calculation. It's a calculation from the banks and the developers. And I'm saying to you that that is why we are working with them. So it's not me sitting in my office and coming...
It doesn't sound really... If it sounds too good to be true, it most probably is that you're saying to the teacher today that under this plan, with a salary of 3,000 cedis, he can afford what? A one-bedroom house or two-bedroom house?
So, for example, in the case of the district's housing, which is being developed with the compressed earth technology, like what we did in Apiatsi as a pilot, the numbers are coming around 300,000 cedis. Now, for 300,000 cedis, for a 15-year mortgage, and this is a CD-based fixed interest 15-year mortgage. The numbers as have been worked for us by the banks and the developers and the unions who are at the table. And remember, we've been sitting with the unions. We've been sitting with the teacher unions, we've been sitting with the trades unions, etc. The numbers as they have gone by are satisfactory. In fact, to the extent that the unions have supplied lists of their members who are willing and ready today to take up some of those properties if they will be delivered.
So that's the market you're delivering to the developers?
Absolutely. So that's a market we're delivering to the developers, and within them, we call them the off-takers. So within them, the banks are sitting, or between them and the developers, the banks are sitting even to begin receiving funding on a graduated basis, so that when the properties are developed, they can pay up to it. Like I said, we're going through the market sounding process. We will announce the price points, etc., to the whole country when we are done with this process, go to Cabinet for approval, go to Parliament for approval, and hopefully that should attract the private developers and the unions themselves, as well as the banks themselves, who are all telling us they can do this, to then come together and then make it happen. We think that this model saves all of us the hurdle of government go look for $200 million and come and build a house.
Safe to say the cheapest house you're looking to build using the Apiati model, it will be 300,000 cedis?
No. I think that 300,000 is for the two-bedroom, I think. I think that 300,000 is for the two-bedroom detached unit.
So you're actually hoping to build houses cheaper than 300,000?
Yes, there's a one-bedroom semi-detached unit. Then there are the two-bedroom detached, the two-bedroom semi-detached. So depending on the particular type, the price points are there. I'm sure I'll be here on your show with the plans and the prices when we are done with the process.
And all the houses will be priced in cedis?
For the district housing, which is being built with local compressed earth material, that doesn't require imported materials, priced in cedis, and then being mortgaged in fixed interest cedi-backed mortgages. We've divided the country into three. There's a rural districts that are using the compressed earth technology. Then we have what we call the peri-urban districts. They will be using, we are exploring the concept of the prefab units. Already we have some interesting numbers on it, but we're pushing the developers to explore how they can give us some better numbers on that one. And then there's the affordable housing units. And because for those you are using the Suncrete technology and you have a lot of imported items in there, you would have to do a cedi equivalent of whatever price point that you are looking for.
Let's talk politics now, because you're also the vice chair of the Bawumia Manifesto Committee. Tomorrow is a big day. Are you in NAPO's camp?
We don't have camps. We have the New Patriotic Party's camp.
Well, if you listen to Apia Kubi, who is a leading member of your party and a member of the council and a member of parliament, he says he is not in NAPO's camp because NAPO can hold his hand in his constituency.
Well, that's looking at the matter in a small way. Look at it in a big way. Take the history of vice presidential nominations. You will not find one nomination that has not had somebody saying, I don't like this, or I'll prefer somebody else. So if you look at the history of vice presidential nominations, even the current leader of our party, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's nomination, if you've spoken to people who are at the council meeting, was a very heated and disagreeable one. So it is not strange that somebody will say, I'm not in favor of this. In fact, the last time a candidate, I think, went alone for a major election, I think it was President Mahama, who went in the NDC's primaries unopposed.
Yes.
He didn't get 100%. Sole candidate. He didn't get 100%. So it's not strange that somebody will say, I prefer somebody else. But I am pretty sure that at tomorrow's council meeting, the party will rally together. We'll get our ticket completed. And then we're looking
But for you, why NAPO?
Say again?
For you, why NAPO?
Because
you must have made a personal decision on this matter.
Me? I'm not the flag bearer of the
I know. I mean, in a sense, your MPP encourages dissent, if you may.
No, the MPP doesn't encourage dissent.
You are a party that believes in democracy.
No, yeah.
Right?
The party's rules are quite clear.
And you rightly mentioned the Bawumia case. People went into the meeting, disagreed, but when the party took a decision, you fall in line. So what I mean is you must make a personal decision, say, this is what the candidate likes. Do I like him too?
That's not a question in front of everybody. The party's constitution says that when it comes to the choice of the running mate, it doesn't say that the members of parliament should express their views or ministers or others. It says that the flag bearer shall, in consultation with the National Council, it doesn't even say a steering committee or NEC, the flag bearer and the National Council have a conversation. And the flag bearer says, this is my nominee. And the party's rules prescribe the criteria. More than 5 years standing, should have been a member of the party, contributing. I mean, Napo's record. Napo was, the current candidate's political projects manager somewhere about 10 years ago. His record in this party is one that speaks for itself. So for the flag bearer of the party to nominate him at council, which we expect tomorrow, we as members of parliament have been told, it's been an overwhelming support that members of parliament have given. You may find one or two dissenting, but like I told you, President Mahama didn't get 100% when he was alone on the ballot. So that is in itself not strange. So tomorrow at council, we expect a smooth process, and then we expect that later in the coming week, the whole ticket, as in the candidate and the vice presidential candidate, will be formally adored to the entire country. And then we hit the road for the second part of our campaign.
How do you respond to Napo's biggest challenge? The perception that he's arrogant. That, many say, yeah, he may galvanize your base in the Ashanti region, but he may rub off wrongly on the generality of the electorate.
We take everything as feedback. If you follow the leader of the party, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, he's no one to dismiss any point that anybody makes to him. You've seen his town hall meetings where he sits in open court, people come, critique, give feedback. We take everything as feedback. And things that we think are erroneous impressions, what we have to do to correct those erroneous impressions, we do. Things that we think are legitimate points of feedback, we take them and then we act on them. We live in a society where sometimes confidence is misconstrued as arrogant. I've been described as arrogant by some people. So those are things that I don't even think going into those conversations necessarily take away from the momentum that we are currently driving and engaging in. I think the big things are that tomorrow, God willing, by 6 p.m., council would have, having consulted with the candidate, made a decision. Early next week, we are hoping we'll have an opportunity to adore our full ticket. We at the Manifesto Committee are just finishing with the final work on the Manifesto, and we expect that sooner than later, we will complement with the launch of the Manifesto. And then we can have a clear, 85, 90 days of stamping across the country and taking the message of bold solutions of the new patriotic party to every constituency across this country and explaining to the country that, yes, cost of living today has gone up and people are pained by it, but governing the country with all of its elements, including growth, including jobs, including development, including protecting us from some of the major challenges that have come around the world, including investment in education, infrastructure, and development, we are in the best position to carry this country.
Well, the evidence,
the questions of cost.
Well, the evidence over the last 3 years at least doesn't back that.
Which
not
one?
Yet.
Which
the evidence about first time in our history that we've done a domestic debt exchange. First time that we've defaulted.
Oh, those are conditions.
Well, no, I mean,
there are things that have happened.
No, but yeah, of course. I mean, economically, people felt it, and people haven't still recovered from that.
That is true.
The economic crisis we are in is the worst we've seen, certainly in a generation.
Yes.
That is your record.
Well,
so
our record is not
it doesn't
just,
quite suggest that,
but,
all the things you've said
as you heard me clearly
backed by the
say,
facts.
As you heard me, no, it is backed by the facts. As you heard me say clearly, I've said that cost of living today, admittedly, is high. But governing the country is more than just the cost of living. There are many other things in it.
Yeah, but that's what will kill you. The cost of living is what the voter says. Your own President Kufuor, make that point succinctly.
That is
what you feel in your pocket that influences your vote.
So we are clear in our minds that that is something that we have to deal with, and we are consistently working at it. But we're saying to you that governing a country goes beyond cost of living. Cost of living is important. It is a major thing. It's what you feel in your pocket. But there's growth, there's jobs, there's infrastructure, there's protection against conditions that are, hitting us on a daily basis. There are many other things, education, health, a lot of things all around us. And we're saying that as we go around the country and speak to the country about the total embodiment of all of this, we are very expectant, because what we are seeing, what we are hearing on the ground is that people understand the dynamics. That is not just cost of living, it is many other things. And people see what we are trying to do about cost of living while we are trying to tackle that. So the point I'm making is that when we are done with council tomorrow, done with outdooring of the ticket, done with Manifesto, we'll hit the country with a bigger message, bigger.
And very quickly on...
we are hopeful that...
On Napo, you admit that the primary reason why he got onto the ticket, one, he comes from the Ashanti region, two, you want to galvanize your base there. Primary?
Who makes a choice by deciding that I don't want to bring my base together? In politics 101, you galvanize your base.
But that's a primary reason, was it?
But even beyond galvanizing your base, because if that is what it was, it would have been anybody else. This is a person who comes with a strong track record, I think from about 2009, in Parliament, as a member of Parliament, a strong track record in handling about two of some of the most difficult ministries in the Akufo-Addo administration, a strong track record in the party and serving within the party in various capacities. So it's not just about galvanizing Ashanti and galvanizing the base. He comes with his own credentials that we believe...
And very finally, the manifesto, when is it ready?
Well, we have a timetable to complete the work that we are doing before the end of this month. And then the party, the National Council, the candidate will take a decision that on this date, it is our desire to outdoor the manifesto and sell all the messages therein.
So before the end of July, you expect to hand Dr. Bawumia a finalized copy?
Yes.
A first draft for him to now import?
We expect to do that.
Okay. And that there is Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
We'll wait tomorrow. The National Council meeting is up. We'll see how it pans out, and we'll have our ears in the room. He knows that. And there'll be debate. There are people who don't agree with the choice. We'll see if we can hear them too. Stay with us. This is your election headquarters. Tomorrow will be all over that for you. As we now hear, he will be formally outdoored in the Ashanti region. This is PM Express. Enjoy the rest of your evening.